Hey guys, Jason here with a word to the wise. I just keeping my ear out, and I'm just trying to be very patient. And I'm not trying to rush into all these rabbit holes. You know, I'm sure that's exactly what they want us to do: is speak a lot, catch us saying a lot of things that they can record through all these videos that we share online, and eventually in the future probably pull them all out through AI and say, well, look, this is what you were saying, this is what you were saying, this is what you were saying. They talk about all that pre-crime possibly in the future using AI and things like that, so I'm sure it's all gonna come to the forefront in some way or another in our near future. What I want to talk about is I was just scrolling, and I've said I'd like to do it sometimes just incognito, where like I'm not signed in, I'm using a separate computer, and just scroll around on YouTube and just see, what the topics are, and if you use the same computer without being signed in, yes, it fixes on patterns and things like that, but it gives you a lot of outside information of other people's things. So what I saw just the other day was, and I'll have to load these on here later for you to see. Now, this was on Yahoo News a week ago, but this is also tying into the faith-based office that they created back in February. And I'm pretty sure I made a video about that, just kind of touching on, it's interesting that they're going to build such a thing, and I'll get more into that as well. So this is the Trump administration launches an anti-Christian bias task force. Here's what it'll do. So I went into the article and I just kind of screenshot these. The then Republican president nominee Donald Trump is prayed over with the Reverend Paula White during the National Faith Summit at Worship with Wonder Church, Monday, October 28th, 2024, in Powder Springs, Georgia. The U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi led a press conference formally launching the White House task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias on Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. The U.S. General Pam Bondi held a press conference Tuesday where she formally launched the White House task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. Joining her were members of the task force as well as people allegedly affected by anti-Christian bias during the Biden administration, which I'll touch on a few of those allegedly affected and how in a second here. Together, their task force will identify an unlawful anti-Christian policies, any unlawful anti-Christian policies, practices, or conducts across the government, seek input from the faith-based organizations and state government to end anti-Christian bias, and find and fix deficiencies existing and regulatory practices that might contribute to anti-Christian bias, Bondi said. In her remarks, Bondi repeated some of Trump's criticisms of Biden's administration, saying that the previous White House engaged in egregious patterns of targeting peaceful Christians. She criticized the Biden administration for targeting pro-life protesters, allowing the FBI to spy on Catholic parishioners, and declaring March 31st the International Transgender Day of Visibility, which last year fell on Easter. The First Amendment isn't just a line of the Constitution, it is the cornerstone of our American liberties, Bondi said. It guarantees every citizen the right to speak freely, worship freely, and live according to their conscience without government interference. Protecting Christians from bias is not favoritism, it's upholding the rule of law and fulfilling the constitutional promise. So, the problem I have with the government still being involved in something like this is, For one, they're calling it anti-Christian bias. Now, that sounds a lot like anti-Semitism, which, if there are already laws and executive orders that have been put in place to protect against anti-Semitism, and now they're having an anti-Christian bias task force that's going to be going out and protecting and possibly arresting people for then expressing their ideas in religious beliefs or anything to that matter against Christians, and they could have the same kind of things that the anti-Semitism laws have been put in place to do, which then, when you have a future that is building on getting back to God, and yeah, I guess we'll squeeze Jesus in there too, but if you're still being aligned with somebody else in the Christian faith, that now, just an idea, they might be trying to then get Christians to team up with them when they are ready to bring more out of how we need to go back to the Old Testament laws. We need to understand through them how God was wanting to have them be first and the rest of us to be trained up by them or led. Just ideas. I'm not trying to be sounding like I'm anti-Semitic or anything like that. I'm not really for these kinds of labels in anything, even in Christianity. I don't want to say that I am a Lutheran or a Presbyterian or a Baptist or any of that kind of stuff. I don't look into those kind of definitions because I don't care to then figure out where I fall in these categories. And things that Biden and his administration did during their presidency, and seeing how in my past videos how I was saying all this is doing is just shutting down all these easy to run systems that once Trump gets in there, all he's going to do is just flip the light switches right back on and go right back to where we were before Biden. And after Trump, things can go right back in the opposite direction. But that's for the future. I don't know what the future holds. We've heard a lot of rumors about there's not going to be elections and all that kind of stuff. The Antichrist has been found. The Mahdi is been brought out. I'm not really wanting to even look into any of those kind of videos and see some guy in a hoodie standing on the street corner with a bunch of people cheering him on. Like, it's just another one of those little small things, you know, a little rabbit hole to run down. You know, you're the fox and chase after it because it's in your instinct. No, I'm not doing it. I've done it for years, and I'm not going to sit here and report on that kind of garbage, because until it comes across the pond, comes across, you know, major news networks of some sort of person, I have no doubt that it could easily be somebody that we've never ever heard of before that's going to pop up out of the woodwork, and it's going to speak wisdom and peace and ideas that everybody's been saying, but somehow this guy is just making mountains move. So with that, I mean, I guess all in all, it's just, you know, here we are, we're just being patient, we're waiting, we're looking. I'm not seeing a lot of things that are bothering me. I don't like a lot of the Musk Doge policies. Trump is doing Trump, and we don't know what things that he is doing now, and saying that it's going to crash markets, and oh, there's power outages in Spain, the world's going to get shut off, and they're going to leave us to our own devices. All that stuff, totally possible. Is it going to affect us? Yeah, it would. It would totally destroy. And if they did that for 4 to 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, we finally fought and gotten our seats back and positions of power, and we're going to fix all this, and we're going to bring the world together in a brand new light. Or aliens. You know, there's a couple of cards on the table that are all just, nobody has any answers or real direction of what's going to happen. We don't know what they're going to do. Only thing I have is the Bible. The Bible's the only prophecy I can believe and rely on. And it sounds like eventually people are going to go be led astray, and they're going to have hatred towards one another. And I don't want this kind of anti-Christian biased task force to sit there and be my dog on the street, and I'm going to sit there and go, oh yeah, well, that doctor at the abortion clinic, he did this and he said that. And that was part of those things that I said that I would kind of refer to, is that, yes, there were people that were arrested at abortion clinics for then, trying to bring the gospel or hope to somebody going into an abortion clinic, and got arrested and thrown in jail. And we saw how churches were getting kind of people locked out. They were watching that one guy where they kicked in his door and arrested him with SWAT teams, as a Christian or Catholic guy in his house. People overstepping their bounds. And is that not happening now during the Trump? Are we not hearing about children and guys being arrested out of courtrooms, off of job sites, out in front of their own houses, at work? They're just getting yanked up by people, and they say they're legal citizens with cards and all the identification, and they're getting arrested and then thrown into some Guatemalan prison or something to that effect. Is it any better? Is anything any different ever? So it's more rabbit holes, instead of having us, poking at Biden. Now the other side can sit there and they can poke at Trump. So it's just, the whole system has flip-flopped. It's stupid. It's so stupid. And the more you just sit back and watch it and don't pay attention to the news and all the rumor mills that are flying around, yeah, I'm watching the Euphrates, see if it dries up. Yeah, I guess we're always watching China and Russia and the Ukraine. And here, after all of this stuff, all the egregious things that Biden did that was unconstitutional, is anybody going to bring charges up on him like they've been trying to do to Trump for the last 8 years, 5 years? I know Trump's whole last presidency, his whole time during Biden's presidency. Is anybody doing that kind of stuff to Biden? Is anybody doing any of that kind of stuff to all his administration that was supposedly doing a lot of unlawful stuff? I mean, Nancy Pelosi, the day before they were trying to announce that they're going to have electric mail trucks, they went out and bought $1 million in stock in Tesla for illegal stock trading. Is anybody going after that? No. None of that stuff ever goes anywhere, because they're all eating at the same table. They all go to the same parties. They all have the big same conferences and congressional dinners and all that kind of stuff. It's a wash. It never goes anywhere, because they're not going to do anything. It's all for show, I believe, for the American people. So that way you have some sort of a little light down at the other end of the tunnel and think, well, we're going that way, and eventually we'll get there and we'll get somewhere with all this. But it never seems to go, because there's always something else going down another rabbit hole. All right, too much ranting. I'm out of here. Word to the wise, guys. God bless.